r/atheism. Hal 87526 says, what's with all the YouTube videos complaining about wokeness in media? They seem to all be conservatives and not sure whether or not they are religious, but I've found most conservatives are. I really try to understand where they're coming from, since they insist they are not racist and only have a problem with diversity when it is forced. They're always talking about the agenda. Usually they'll bring up examples like that shot of all the heroines in Avengers Endgame, and I can understand that, since it is forced and not realistic. However, 1. They always talk about bad writing, as if it is the product of trying to be woke, rather than seeing bad writing as a separate issue. Instead of just being frustrated with the writing, they blame the agenda, and will usually put women of color in the thumbnail to somehow highlight why the writing is bad. 2. They don't seem to want or value diversity at all. They can just barely tolerate it sometimes, and if it involves non-hetero people, black women, or female leads, they almost always complain about it. 3. Because they see CI's white male characters as the norm, any attempts to have more diversity is likely going to feel forced to them, because it's outside the established norm. I don't buy that they are bigoted and homophobic, since they are not doing a very good job of hiding it. Have you noticed these things? What are your thoughts? Hemlock Harry says, have you noticed these things? What are your thoughts? I've written entire epistles about how and why I think religious thought inspires irrational behavior. I've quoted philosophers and scientists and took the time to formulate well thought through objections to their line of thought and the implications thereof. So have countless others. But when a moderately informed 15-year-old states something unrealistic and not very well thought through on Twitter, they're gonna go with that and beat their dead horse for another round. They are not doing this to start a discussion, but to get away from it and score some outrage points on their way out. It's deflection and, as always, bullshit. Affectionate Song 402 says, exactly what it is, BS and propaganda for the alt-right to hand-rain about. Also to justify their support of their orange convicted full of hate leader. Hurricane Alan Turn says, I know they haven't paid attention to media for decades. No one complained about Billy D. Williams being cast in The Empire Strikes Back. So why is casting black actors woke now? Was casting Eartha Kitt in the Batman TV series woke? If not, why is casting Zoe Kravitz woke now? These dickless morons have no idea what they are talking about. Generic User 66 says, it's racism. Plain and simple. They are not going to admit they're racist. But they are. Mondoff says, when asked what being woke means in court, Ron DeSantis' lawyer said that it's the belief that systemic racism exists in the United States. They can neither argue that racism doesn't exist within the US or admit that it does, and they prefer it that way. No External 8816 says, they pander to the fash crowd. Outrage leads to clicks, clicks lead to money. Deep Free says, clicks, yeah, they're all pissed because they can't call people NRS or CHKS or SBKS or FDS or popular girl, S, sluts or bimbus anymore, and with their limited vocabulary, this really stymies their conversations. Staying Awake 100 says, sounds about accurate. No one asks, but why does this character have to be a white guy? Every other demographic needs a special reason why they are there, to have permission to be there without making conservatives angry. Wilder Jackal says, exactly, when someone asks what a character being black adds to the story, as what would them being white add to the story? What does them being gay add to the story? What would them being straight add to the story? Ogremk5 says, I'll be willing to bet two things. 1, that they cannot define woke. 2, that they have never even heard of half of the events that cause wokeness to be a thing. Wittycomb 2000 says, They don't like getting called out on their racism, sexism, and other shitty behavior. Disastrous Belt 7556 says, it's a hustle. You need views to make money, but you have no discernible skills or interesting ideas to attract an audience. So what do? Pick something that's already famous, insert movie or TV show, come up with some sort of truly outrageous take and title to get people to react, and then hope you get reactions for the algorithms to get you paid. If you can tailor your take to a specific audience, it'll help get the algorithms to do more work for you, and the anti-woke audience happens to be an easy target. Basically all the same reasons it's easy to get a legal job via the Federalist Society. r/atheism. Depressed Philosophus says, Muslim friend didn't like my Reddit comments. I checked out the Quran after his insults. So he checks my Reddit comments on religion, starts questioning my views. Long thing short, you don't read the Quran cause of your high ego, and you have no morals as an atheist. So I checked out the Quran. Mountains are pikes that stabilize the earth. Sun has a resting place. Sun and day, moon, and night orbit in rapid succession. How can any human read these claims, knowing they are wrong, and still believe? Oh yeah, but the orbit of the sun is around the Milky Way galaxy, how could they know this? Ah yes, the orbit of sun in the day, so I suppose one day lasts 115 million years lol. Then you get a heaven above the earth with invisible pillars. Sure, try to interpret each verse separately, but reading all of them together don't we realize the model of earth and universe the Quran claims to be true? It's pure nonsense. Layers of earth, layers of heavens built on top of each other, doesn't even matter if earth is flat or not. And then morality. I mean, if God exists, morality is built in me, so I can be atheist and have a sense of morality. But even then, if I'm immoral it's because I don't find having slaves moral, or visiting the prophet uninvited, and overstaying my welcome immoral. The word of Allah can't be corrupted. So is the Bible or the Quran true, although both are the word of Allah? Question mark? Miriam, Imran, Aaron and Jesus are a happy family apparently. Before checking the Quran out, I thought the message was loose and very open to interpretation. But I've read many verses and cross-checked them, and its meaning is so obviously wrong. How can Muslims read it and still believe in this stuff? Rhetoric Ethan says, how can Muslims read it and still believe in this stuff? That's the frick ed up part, they don't read it yet still believe. At this point your friend has likely read less of the Quran than you. Mediocre Source 920 says, tell him that you /have/ read the Quran, and that's why you don't believe. It just doesn't make sense. I feel I have better morals as an atheist. I don't need threat of eternal torment in the afterlife to make me not want to do horrible things to people. Whereas, religious people seem to need little reason to do horrible things to one another, especially people who don't agree with their backwards views. Slightly Madangus says, isn't an important part of Islam that Muslims must undergo Islamic studies? Isn't that the entire point of madrasa? Now, think about that. Muslims do not learn about the Quran from reading the Quran. They are taught what the Quran means, so that when they then read the Quran, they will correctly interpret the meaning of the Quran. You know what that's called? Indoctrination. Leclost says, Milky Way galaxy oddly sexual Mayo. Eldritch Cleaver says, no morals as an atheist lol bro, Islam is cool with men marrying, and, frick, I'm children so don't talk to me about morals. Avaraja Joe 707 says, when you are brainwashed from birth you become a religious zombie who knows nothing but the fantasies you have been led to believe. Sadly, in majority Muslim nations, you are either with them, or you are against them, so you have no choice. Somebody wondering 665 says, how friendly are you two? Because you may not be for long. Hemlock Harry says, before checking the Quran out, I thought the message was loose and very open to interpretation. Yeah, that's a thing for Muslims. There are many that believe the Quran is the literal word of God, written in God's own language. You're not supposed to interpret anything, it's literal, just do what it says. Which in practice of course is impossible, and leads to a lot of infighting. When two tribes both claim the other is interpreting, while they are just being correct, guess what tends to happen? How can any human read these claims, knowing they are wrong, and still believe? If I had $1 million, I'd be happy to give them to the person who can answer that question definitively. But I do know tribalism and fear play a bigger role than theology. That's why our arguments keep falling flat, I think. To value faith over common sense is not just a requirement, it's considered a virtue. And then morality. I mean, if God exists, morality is built in me, so I can be atheist and have a sense of morality. But even then, if I'm immoral, it's because I don't find having slaves moral, or visiting the prophet uninvited, and overstaying my welcome immoral. I'm afraid you're looking for logic, where there is none. You're right, but it isn't going to get you anywhere. The religious mind is wired to handle people who are right. For them it's just an excellent opportunity to keep the faith regardless. Long thing short, you don't read the Quran cause of your high ego, and you have no morals as an atheist. Yeah, that's sus, I guess. Complain about my ego some more, while your God burns people in hell for not praising him enough. That's all for this video. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe.